So I'll begin by giving you the quick Father Alex report. You're probably wondering what happened to him. On Wednesday morning, he packed up all of his earthly possessions into his tiny little hatchback, which is remarkable in and of itself. And he started to drive west, but before he even left the city limits, he made one pit stop. Look at the smile on that face. He's just like so happy, right? Doing the thing that he always loves. And so anyways, after a McBreakfast of champions, he drove west and drove, and over the course of 2 days, he eventually made it to Windsor, Ontario, to stop in to see his family before crossing the bridge over to Detroit. And so he's getting settled now in Detroit. Father Dan is going to be arriving next weekend. He'll preach next weekend. Father Isaac will come 2 weeks after that, and his first weekend here will be July 22nd and 23rd. And now, just to say, a lot of people have been asking me, are you going to miss Father Alex? Of course I will. And I'm so happy for him. For many reasons, but among other things, that he's going to be so much closer to his family, right? And I've been reflecting a lot on family recently. I was home in Ottawa just a couple weeks ago for the ordinations. I got to see my family. Here's a picture of most of them from last summer. But the Lobo extended family, it's beautiful, it's messy, it's dysfunctional, and it's very loving. And I would say that whenever people visit Ottawa, they need to make a point of stopping in to see my family. If for no other reason, my mom's an amazing cook, and my dad loves to tell old stories that he somewhat embellishes, but that are often very embarrassing. And so it's worth it. It's worth a stop. In fact, when I was home for the ordinations, I tried to arrange a little get-together. I knew a lot of people would be converging on Ottawa, and so different staff and friends and companion priests and brothers. And so I asked Mom and Dad, would you host a little dinner party? And so they said, sure. They have this huge dining room table. They said, well, why don't we had about 9 people that we're going to bring together around the table and just have a lovely evening together. And so it promised to be awesome. I made the mistake of, and I've shared this before, I don't have the gift of hospitality, but I have the gift of extending other people's hospitality, right? So I made the mistake of inviting Father Alex, and it was Sunday afternoon. I was like, hey, do you have anything to do tonight? You can come over to my folks' place. And he said, sure, that sounds great. He's experienced the Lobo hospitality before. And so half an hour later, he texts me and he says, is it okay if Father Brenton comes with me? So he's another companion priest who happens to be working in Toronto right now. I checked with my mom. Sure, no problem. 30 minutes later, Father Brenton texts me and says, is it okay if Father Juan Pablo comes with me? He's another companion priest who happens to be ministering in Houston. Checked with my mom. Sure, no problem. Before I knew it, Father Rob, Father Ken, even Father Dan showed up. We grew from 9 people to 27 people at this party. And in fact, it turned into 2 different parties. There was the first party for all the kids, the young ones there. I'm trying to occupy them with a game. And then after that, the adults started to converge. Now, luckily, my parents had just renovated their kitchen. So there's the newly renovated kitchen that it was actually my brother who did the work. He just made one mistake. He should have cut a hole in the wall for a drive-through window with all the mouths that were being fed that night. Anyways, I tried to help a little bit, serve a few drinks and do a few dishes, but I got to be honest, by the end of the night, everybody left, and I was ready to collapse. I was so exhausted, and I went over to, I barely did anything, by the way. My mom did all the work. She's heroic in what she produced. I went over to Mom and Dad just to thank them for their hospitality and their generosity. And Mom, welling up with tears, said, Simon, you never ask for anything. This is the least we could do. A mother's love, eh? And how she expresses that through acts of service. So beautiful how she served and sacrificed. And I think of families where it's just so normal to extend love. We see this all over the place. I have friends who I've known for a long time. BC, before children, and then AD, after diapers, and I've seen something change in them, right? There's a deeper kind of love that is created and grows within them. Or I've witnessed people who later in life, they're caring for their aging parents. And I've witnessed, again, that beautiful family bond of love. It hurts, it's sacrificial, and yet they're willing to love no matter what the cost. But I think if we're honest, as much as we try to love our families, and I'll include as well our spiritual families, those in our orbit, but siblings, parents, children, whatever, very often it's not a pure sacrificial love. When it comes to family, isn't it true that we can turn into our relating with each other in various ways? We can pry and pester. You know, you got somebody a sibling, and they're doing something that you don't really approve of, and you kind of get on their case. You're trying to fix them. Or maybe you're protective. Parents sometimes can be overly protective. We've heard of that expression, helicopter parents, where they don't allow their children to actually experience life and make some mistakes to learn from them. Or there's those who perform and please children, where sometimes they're trying to do the good thing, but their motivation is they want to get a reward, or they want to just manage emotions, right? And that's not true love either. Or sometimes we can just pose, right? Where we want to appear to be loving, but in actual fact, when things get tough, things get challenging, we keep our distance and let other people swoop in and help out. There's all different kinds of ways in which our motivation for loving can be mixed. And subtly, in each of those ways, it's about me and what I get, rather than what I give. And I could have come up with a longer list, but those were the only words that I could think of that started with P. And I've been guilty of all of them, by the way. So naturally, God wants us to love our families, right? And Jesus, in the gospel today, he gives this challenge. He calls us to love our families more. He says this. He's talking to his 12 apostles. He says, whoever loves father or mother more is worthy of me, and whoever loves son or daughter more is worthy of me, right? If you said right, then I tricked you deliberately. That's not what he says. In fact, and I'll give you a quick little bit of context. He's talking to the 12 apostles just before sending them out on their very first mission. And he knows that as they're going to preach the kingdom, they're going to heal the sick, there's going to be pushback, there's going to be persecution, and throughout their lives as they continue on these missions, ultimately, every single one of them, with the exception of John, will die a martyr's death, the ultimate sacrifice. So he's trying to get them ready for what they will face, and to do so, he says this: whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. You've got to love me more, is what he's saying. And I just picture this situation, right? In the 21st century in Canada, we have this appropriate inclination to love our families. But for the first century Jewish people, family was everything. Their laws, their society, everything was built around loving family. So just imagine, they're sitting there, Jesus is giving the final motivational speech before sending them off. They're feeling this fear, this excitement, and then suddenly shock. And Thomas probably raised his hand, and he's like, just to clarify, Jesus, you want me to love you more than I love my dad? Yes. And even my mom? Yes. Bartholomew. Jesus, so you want me to love you more than I love my children? Yes. Peter. So yeah, like on my wedding day, we exchange vows and stuff. Jesus, you want me to love you more than I love my wife? Yes. Jesus is making an incredibly challenging and demanding call of those first apostles, and he makes that same challenge to each of us today. If you would be my disciple, if you would be my apostle, one who is sent, then you must love me more. You must love me first. I have to be your top priority. Now, here's the key. At no point does Jesus say, I want you to love your families less. But he does say, I want you to love me more. And why? Because God is love. Jesus is love personified. We see it so beautifully displayed on the crucifix, this offering, this sacrificial love. And he's basically saying, if you would love me first, if you would love me more, if you would experience the love that I have for you, where I offered my life for you, that will increase your capacity to love your own family even more than you thought imaginable. It's not a zero-sum game, like there's a finite amount of love and somehow we have this fear. If I love Jesus first, then I'm going to neglect my family. That's not the case at all. There's a choice before us. There's this dynamic. If we say, no, I'm going to love my family first, what can happen is the risk that we slide into prying and pestering and protecting and performing and pleasing and posing, all that kind of stuff. But if we love Jesus more, we will end up loving our families more, because he is the multiplying factor. He increases our ability to love even when it hurts. Now, I think of a beautiful example of this I witnessed recently. I went to visit an older couple. The husband just found out that he was diagnosed with an advanced form of cancer. Doctors say he has about 12 months to live. And I was there. You can just imagine how it's rocked their whole family, and yet so beautiful being in their presence, this incredible faith. And because of health reasons, they haven't been able to come to church in person for a while. But the wife said, we watch online religiously. No pun intended. And they're probably watching right now, but praying with us, with this community. And at one point in the conversation, just kind of in passing, he asked, what is the church's position on MAID, on medical assistance in dying? And I'm so grateful for the question, to be able to talk it out. And it can be so confusing because this is something that's been made legal in our country, and so sometimes that can lead us to think that it's morally good. But I tried to explain, anytime we intentionally take an innocent human life, that's not good. That's not in keeping with God's plan. And anytime we try to say, I want to do it my way. I don't want to go on God's terms or God's timeline. I want to go out on my terms. That's gravely problematic. And I think he was understanding what I was saying and agreeing. And I went on to say, sometimes there's this motivation that people have that it seems loving to say, I don't want to be a burden to these people who are caring for me. And the wife was right there, and I knew how much she had been walking with him and serving him and preparing meals that he was able to keep down during the treatments. And I just said to her, is he a burden to you? And tears welled up in her eyes, and she said, I'm just living my marriage vows. And it occurred to me that what was happening there between them was not just something human, like that would be impossible. There was something supernatural that was taking place. Jesus was giving her the ability to serve and to love, and actually for them to love each other through this very painful and sacrificial season of life. And I found it so inspiring because for me, after all these years, I'm still not that good at loving my family. I'm not even that good at loving my spiritual family, you. And I need to grow. And what I'm convicted of is I've got to put first things first. I've got to love Jesus more. and the rest is going to fall into place. And this kind of prayer has just been rising up in me over the last couple of days, and it's something like this: Jesus, help me to love you more, that I may love my family more. I just want to pause for a moment and give you a chance. Perhaps there's somebody in your life, a family member, a parent, a child, a sibling, even somebody in your spiritual family, a dear friend, who you're having trouble loving right now. And we all have them. I do too. And maybe just close your eyes and picture them for a moment. And I just want to pray this prayer and let you unite your heart to it. Jesus, help me to love you more, that I may love this person more. You see, the gospel today is so simple. It's subtle, but I believe it's profound. So much of this spiritual life is about letting go of our preferences, our attitudes, our approach, letting go of our need for control, even love, to love on my terms. That we let go of a worldly notion of love. We let go even of our own preconceived idea of what love is, and even admit, I don't even know how to do this well, but Jesus does. And may St. Benedict be a school of prayer, a school of love, rather, where we can say, Jesus, we want to love you more, that you may teach us how to love in a supernatural and sacrificial way.